Welcome, everyone, to the Inside Story podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of building diverse businesses and becoming a successful entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dursun Halimova, business coach and facilitator on a mission to help build impactful businesses. And today we are taking a sneak peek at AI Planet, whose vision is to make AI accessible to everyone. It thrives on a global community of 300,000 members. And my guest is Chanukya Patnaik, who is the founder and CEO of AI Planet. There, he leads the effort to democratize AI and cutting edge AI research, emphasizing the need to harness the transformative power of AI to address real life problems while also prioritizing privacy, safety, and security. Chanukya has a background in leadership roles across various startups and advisory positions with Swiss scale-ups like AI Business School and Global AI Hub. He is also part of Belgium's 40 under 40 for his societal work. As an advocate for the responsible building and usage of AI, he has also spoken at various events and conferences, including TEDx Luxembourg, as well as Stanford University, among others. Chanukya, it's great to have you on the Inside Story podcast.
Thanks, Darshun, and it's great to be here. And thanks for having me. Looking forward to the podcast.
Great. To start off, I would read several unfinished sentences, and I would ask you to finish them for us, please.
Yeah, sure.
The first one. Being an entrepreneur means?
I think it's adventurous, I would say.
Indeed. Building an impactful business requires?
It needs a big courage and big vision, and most importantly, a big heart.
Yeah. And failure is?
Failure is all about lessons.
Success is a result of?
Of a lot of failures and also a lot of hard work that you put to achieve your objectives.
And being fulfilled in life means?
In my opinion, it's all about being content and making a meaningful difference.
Indeed. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I want us to start the conversation with you telling briefly about AI Planet. What is it and why did you start it?
Sure. When I talk about AI Planet, I'll probably talk about the inception journey. We started back in 2020. Again, at that time, I was still working with my previous startup, CompliData, where I was one of the founding team members and data scientists there, working on some financial services problem statements. And I saw one particular problem consistently over a period of 3 years while I was working as a data scientist, where there is a lot of hype about AI, data science. But in reality, more than 80-90% of these projects were failing to drive business value. Whereas in PR, we talk so nicely about it, right? And I try to understand why this is happening in the first place. And that's when I figured out there is a huge gap on awareness, that is education. And on the other side, there are different broken pieces in the entire development lifecycle, right from lack of quality data to lack of quality industry-ready talent to these AI research and development being extremely expensive and time consuming and so on and so forth, right? And now when we talk about LLMs, there are other set of issues like inaccuracies, data privacy, security concerns, and so on and so forth. So there are two huge gaps, both on education and loopholes on the entire development life cycle. And that's when I thought, I was looking for a meaningful problem to solve. And I always believed AI as a field can not just impact one industry, but it can impact each and every industry out there. And not just about industry, but it can also have a societal impact at large, right? I thought, why not solve this problem so that we can enable the world to harness the full power of AI to solve many more meaningful real life problems. So that was the hypothesis with which AI Planet was started. And our larger vision is to educate and build AI for everyone. And fast forward to today, on the education side, we have impacted 300,000 people. And on the development side, we have built several open source models and something like an AI kitchen that can be used by organizations to build very custom specific use cases in their own industry, be it education industry, healthcare, financial services, so on and so forth. That's where I'll probably take a pause. that's what we should do in short, where we want to make AI accessible to everyone.
No, thank you so much for that. And maybe to follow up, as you've also pointed out, a huge part of AI Planet is this education and community aspect, right? You have over 300,000 members who are benefiting from the platform. Tell us, why is it so important for you to have this education slash community component? And how does this initiative then support the remaining business?
I always believed as an individual, I can only do so much, but as a team, we can do much more. And as a community, we can make even huge impact, right? So that's where I fundamentally believe in taking people along with me. And that's where this community first approach always came in. Okay, in order to address some real world problems across industries, across different societal issues, I think as an individual or as an organization, we may not be able to drive that impact. But if we have a community, if we can thrive on a community, if we can enable them with education, I know they would utilize that skill to solve the problems. And that's where, when I talk about the education part, I think that's the first stepping stone for any emerging technology, right? Where if you don't educate people about what this technology about, what kind of impact it has, what kind of threats it has, it doesn't get accessible to anyone, and people don't realize its impact. And that's where, like, I think education has been a paramount for us in terms of taking that first step. And also it goes down to my own childhood, where my mom is a teacher, and I was always brought up with this school of thought that if you impact someone with education, it doesn't just transform them, but also it'll transform people around them. So these are some of the school of thoughts I was brought up with. That's where education and technology have always been closer to heart, and community is something that's a huge enabler, which is going to drive a massive impact out there.
Indeed, I couldn't agree with that more. I think a great way to kind of promote any kind of initiative is right by educating people so they change maybe the way they look at things and how they use new technology. But it also, to your point, maybe they impact other people through with who they interact. They can also kind of spread this message or the mission even further. And if they have the right understanding of the new technology, I think they're in a better position than to also present and promote it. And do you mind also giving us an idea of clients that you're working with and how exactly they use the AI Planet, your platform?
Sure, absolutely. On the education part, it's anyone who wants to learn data science and AI can come to our platform, right? It's a free to use platform. You can come to learn data science and AI for free. And on the other side, where we work with large enterprises, where we help them enable generative AI or AI into their operations, or into enable their existing products with generative AI capabilities or AI capabilities in particular, right? So this could range from a simple customer support chatbot to an AI-powered search and chat engine on top of the entire knowledge bases. When I say entire knowledge bases, an insurance company could have a document management system with all the compliance documents or all the customer documents. And if they want to retrieve information from 20 million documents about a particular customer or about a particular topic, they can just simply write a question, and AI would ensure it gets the relevant information from all these 20 million documents and provide it to them, and they will be able to seamlessly access those documents as well. So it's all about simplification of information and making it accessible to the end users, right? So these are some of the use cases. But as I mentioned, it's like a AI kitchen, and like a kitchen, world-class kitchen, has all the ingredients, all the tool sets to either cook a Mediterranean dish or a South Indian, North Indian dish. So similarly, it's like a AI kitchen. Using this AI kitchen, you can either build solutions, AI solutions in the field of healthcare, education, financial services, and so on and so forth. So that's the core layer we provide through some of our large enterprises.
Thank you for showcasing that through the examples. I think it gives us a bit clearer picture of how exactly clients interact with your platform. And maybe to leave for a moment AI Planet, because this is not your first venture so far. You were in the founding teams of two startups. How has that experience enabled you to start AI Planet, your own startup, and were there any specific lessons you took away from those two experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had always done the leadership role that I have always worked with lean teams, especially with startups, including being part of founding teams. I think it's been an incredible experience. So before starting AI Planet, I dabbled around with five other ideas where I failed miserably, and and then I'm always happy about the experiences that I've had. Right at a point in time, I realized I need to build solid acumen on technology, and that drove me to self-learn data science and then pursue a formal master. And then a different learning experience taught me to manage teams better, or even raise funds or whatever it is. Right. So every learning experience with a startup has taught me something. And especially having worked with startups, you have to don multiple roles. If you're just a data scientist, and at least it has been with my case where I just didn't focus on one particular function. I was also doing something on partnerships, on sales, or whatever it is. So I think it allows you to go through different functions, what's happening on different functions. And I think that experience actually adds up when you're starting your own company. I think that's invaluable, I would say. These are more experiential in nature, right? Where you can't quantify because I did this, I could do that, but it's more experiential. You learn it, and then you instinctively start implementing some of your learnings, and that's a great value add.
Indeed. I mean, some of the learning, I think it's also, as you said, hard to verbalize, right? It comes intuitive when you face the similar situation or in a similar context, you somehow intuitively start applying the skills that you've learned.
Yeah.
And to follow up now on that kind of journey from 2014 to 2019, you have tested several ideas on your own. And as you just mentioned yourself, you failed miserably, right? That's when also you realize that to achieve the impact that you are after, you need the technical expertise. And as you highlighted, that's when you did the master's in data science. Later in 2021, you started your first company called Skillspace, which was a remote technical assessment software to hire and build great developers and data scientists. Can you briefly also touch upon this particular experience and if Skillspace is still alive?
Right. Oh, thanks for that question. It's a bit different, right? I think so. When I talk about particularly AI Planet's journey, I'll probably give a bit of pretext. AI Planet was earlier called as DeFi, and then at that time, we had this larger purpose to learn, assess, and build AI for everyone. Learning is like where you can learn. Assessment is where skill space emerged, and that's one of our first products where we launched it as a full scale company. We started dabbling around where we wanted to focus on skills over degrees, where if someone has a skill, they should be able to get hired. And especially when it comes to the technical roles, I think it's all about sheer skill that should put someone into a coding job or a data science job or whatever it is. So that was the fundamental thought process with which we started back in the days. We quickly realized while we were able to build a solid product, we were able to gain initial traction. After a while, after experimenting it for 3-4 months, getting into the market, we realized the market was a bit saturated. There are enough players in the market who are doing an amazing job, but also it's not that we were not doing an amazing job. We were trying to bring something on the table, but I think the market was already captured and it got saturated. And we realized it didn't make sense for us to move forward. We didn't see a brighter future there in terms of what we could do differently to replace the existing systems, right? And that's where you end up making some mistakes as first time entrepreneurs. And that was one of the mistakes that did where we didn't validate the market very well. Of course, I mean, we validated the problem statement, but it takes something beyond to validate the market and understand whether this kind of a product would withstand in the market for a long run, and would that become, let's say, 100 million revenue generated company or 1 billion revenue generated company in a span of next 5 to 7 years or 10 years. So those are some of the hypotheses we failed at. And that was a good learning experience overall for us, and which we tried to incorporate whenever we built newer products to the market.
Indeed. I mean, entrepreneurial journey is a journey of trial and error, and I think the big part of any entrepreneur is setting hypotheses, testing, trying new things, failing, learning, right? And it takes also a lot of courage to accept the fact that you have maybe failed, quote unquote, right? Although maybe it's not a failure, right? Every failure is a learning opportunity. But it does take a courage to put something new out there and then to realize that maybe this is not adding the value to the market as you hoped, and kind of to pivot, to change and try something new. So it is, I think, an essential skill for an entrepreneur. So you had several experiences where you pursued ideas and they failed, or at least they didn't go as you expected them to go. So how these experiences have helped you build your current company, AI Planet, and how is your new company different from the previous ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I talk about my previous experiences, I think all the problems that I have personally picked were really good, really ambitious, and all. Just that I failed at different times because of lack of team or lack of adequate technical skills to build a particular product and other things. I think by the time I came to AI Planet, I as an individual has grown significantly in terms of uh, understanding, reading the markets. While markets is one thing, I learned how to manage teams, and beyond that, I think that thinking big and also being ambitious and having that mindset, all these things are one side of the story which you build like as if you're building your muscle while going for gym, right? So that is one part of the story. But I think one thing that I resonate very well is like, and I always I built this acumen where like, and I always focused on driving impact, making difference, and solving one of the hardest problems out there, right? So this is something that was built over a period of time, and that's something that was not there earlier, which I could only recognize and realize at a later stage. And that's where we picked a hard enough problem, which is going to make a massive impact, right? And then all we focused on is creating value, making that impact. And we believe like, if we are able to get that right, if we are able to solve that problem, make a difference and make an impact, rest of the things would come as a byproduct, be it raising funds or getting revenues, or even for that matter, getting recognition for the company. So that has changed. That perspective has changed from the previous experiences overall. So that is one of the different things. And also, we are solving a very hard problem. That being said, other problems are also hard problems, in my opinion.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing this. And speaking of funding, you did raise external funding for AI Planet. You graduated from Fit for Start program, which comes with government aid from Luxembourg government. And you've also raised 300,000 angel investment from Zurich. Was this, if you look back, was this external funding enough to fuel the growth of your company and reach the level that you hope to reach? And are you at this point generating enough revenue to sustain your startup?
Thanks. That's a good question. So I think if I talk about our fundraise journey, I think our first fundraise happened after close to 2.5 years after starting the company, right? And initially we were bootstrapping heavily, and we failed to raise our first investment. And then again, in the second time when we went out to raise, we failed again. Third time is when we were able to successfully raise. But what happened the first time when we failed, it was just start of the company. So you have enough motivation, you have your co-founder, and you go for it. But second time was a bit upset for us, where like, even a co-founder decided to leave, and that was a big blow. And you could, even though you have significant traction and other things, you could just really not go into the market because your co-founder has just left, and it leaves a negative impression overall, right? Again, there are different reasons why he left, which are legit, and which we respect that. But that's where, as I see, I think between that second and third attempt, we built that resilience, and we built some solid founding team members as well as leaders within the group. Um, And beyond that, we learned how to build a sustainable business. We realized like, okay, we have a large enough purpose to solve. And now in order to address this problem and serve this purpose, one of the first things that we need to ensure is the business sustainability. So that's where we started thinking about business first principles. We started focusing on revenues more aggressively. And then by the time the third attempt came, we were in a good position and we were able to raise funds from Mr. Selchuk Boydak or even from Fit for Start, Startup Chile, and a bunch of other places, right? So we were able to raise closer to a little over 500,000 with that support. And after that, I think the business principles continued to stick with us. And right now, we broke even. We generate a little more than what we burn. So that way we are self-sustainable. That being said, in order to address a larger market, in order to reach market a bit quickly, I think you need adequate funds, you need deeper pockets. Otherwise, in a product business, if you don't go to the customer first, there are always 20 other products with deep pockets who can reach your customer first and then acquire the market, right? So that's where if we raise the funds, it's more about the growth and shaping the future vision of the company. So
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations with breaking even. I think that is also a big achievement in the startup journey. And yeah, I think in terms of the external funding, one of the things what I've also realized through my own work with working with startups and as well as investors is that they always look for a great team, right? As they say, there is no shortage of ideas. It's the execution of the idea, which requires then great team. And then also to be able to show some traction. And there's also, as you said, there's this challenge, right? Because in the product based business, you need these deep pockets to tap into. Are you envisioning on raising more external funding? What is the plan?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, we would look for raising more external funding for sure. There are a few reasons for it. One, we need to attract some of the smartest talent, which would allow us to solve the hardest problems that we are solving, right? Especially when I talk about AI Planet, we are building something like autonomous human-like agents. Literally, we are mimicking human, and no one has solved this problem in entirety. Even the likes of Google, Facebook, Amazon, Nvidia, etc. And everyone is trying to figure out what is the best way um, to build these agentic systems. And we are also trying to solve that. We open source some of our work, and in order to address this problem, yes, I mean, definitely you need some of the smartest talent, which comes at a cost. And beyond that, when you build products and you want to address larger markets like the US or even in Europe, you have so many different markets, so many different regions. I think you need deep pockets to be able to reach your customers and then acquire them. Otherwise, it's going to be really tough because there will always be other players who can eventually enter the market, and by the time you reach them, they would have already adopted other products. So I think, and you eventually would have a slow death. So it's rather important to grow quickly. That doesn't mean that you should grow at all costs, but you should grow sustainably at the same time. You should grow at the pace.
Yeah, I think the tech-based startups race against time, as you pointed out, right? Like it's especially if it's an industry like an area like AI, which has been developing really, really rapidly as we speak. I think it is important to kind of figure out the best ways to utilize it and solve the existing problems. And I think there's a lot of people racing for the same goal. And speaking of talent, you haven't paid yourself for 2.5 years while you paid your team. How does it feel like to work on something for so long and not to get paid? And did you even envision this happen when you started your startup in the first place?
Yeah, I was prepared for it. And startup is like your baby, right? And you don't want to burn it when uh, it is going through the crisis. And after a point in time, the baby becomes matured and should be able to shoulder the responsibilities much better than you would expect. I think right now we are at a stage where I do not want the baby to be burdened. That's how I put it. But all being said, I think that was expected initially early on. And I think we were working on something really incredible and something impactful, which also gives a lot of gratification and meaning to life and gives that sense of purpose, right? I think that's what drives us. That's what excites us. If a learner in the remotest areas in Nigeria or in Asia is able to learn and get a job or able to set up a training institution, that gets it as excited. Or at the same time, if someone has built a cool solution to classify pests or even to build a smart lens that would give a sense of life for blind people, I think those are some of the stories that gives us gratification and that drives us every day. So there is always enough motivation that is there, especially because of the community that we have built, right? So that drove us, and the rest of the things, I think the revenues are the financial aspects. These are more byproducts. As we make much more meaningful impact, I think those things will be taken care of in the longer run. That's my humble opinion.
Indeed. I mean, I support and agree with your humble opinion. I think it's so important to focus on really solving societal problems, and that also, to your point, adds meaning, right? As we were saying in the beginning of the conversation, what is a purposeful, meaningful, fulfilled life? I think for many people, it's to know that what you are doing is adding value, and that value translates in a way of improving someone's life and well-being, either individuals or planet in general. So I am enjoying this conversation so much, Chanukya, but we do have to wrap up. There is one more question, though, I need to ask you. This question was left by my previous guest. They left this question without knowing who they're leaving it for. But I think this is a great question because as we were speaking of impact, societal impact, this person's question also kind of ties to this aspect. It's a bit long, so bear with me.
Yeah.
Here it goes. I am all about impact, and part of my business is to promote innovation with impact. The other is to be an impact advisor for various other projects. Sometimes I realize that my targets are too ambitious. My struggle then is to assess how to scale down just enough to maximize the impact. And any tips on where the thin line could stand or how we can draw it?
So yeah, I mean that's where I always, I mean, like we always focus on nice to have versus must have things, right? So must have is something more like a necessity, which is going to drive direct value as well as, like, that adds much more to the context, right? And nice to have is you can live even without that. If it is happening, it's okay. I mean, even if it doesn't happen, you can live with it. So that's where I would always segment with whatever impactful projects that we would work on. Is it a must have thing or a nice to have thing? And this also goes with our fundamental principles with developing several products, right? So that's where you need to drive what falls into either of these buckets. And sometimes it so happens that, okay, I mean, you would categorize something into must have, which can have an impact on 10 million people with regards to education or basic healthcare or even basic healthcare diagnosis, whatever it is, it could be on that. So I think that's where I would draw a thin line between really segmenting into must have, nice to have, and then just prioritize the must have things than the nice to have. But that's very subjective. It depends on the prerogative of the individual that way, on how they want to segment there.
Indeed. And how do you go about then identifying what is a must have and nice to have? I'm assuming this kind of knowledge comes from the beneficiary, your customer, right? What is a must have for my customer or target audience versus a nice to have?
Right.
If am I right in that? And then if I am, then how do you solicit that information from your
Yes.
customers?
Right. So I'll give a simple example here. So I went to a blind foundation. Basically, like, there I met closer to 60, 70 people who have physical challenge in terms of seeing, right? And then there is an NGO who is working on providing a smart lens that would allow people to see what's in front of them. They can ask what is in front of them, or they can also detect objects like how far is the water bottle and things like that. So when we went and visited that, while having a smart glass is cool, but what we realized after talking to the people there and at the foundation is each and every one has a smartphone, and having a a commodity. I mean, having a object like lens, it's tough for someone to carry all the time. Leaving that aside, it's expensive. It is going to come at a cost of $1,000, $2,000. Whereas what I see is everyone has a phone and everyone is able to access that phone very, very easily. And that's where, like, you need to, and this particular foundation has the vision to even build a mobile app at some point in time. And the other thing is build a smart lens. Now, in terms of prioritization or even segmenting, is it must or is it a necessity to build a smart lens? Or is it a necessity to build smartphone application? I mean, that's where we have put it smartphone application as a must have rather than keeping it into the future scope. Put it now because the accessibility is easier. Where if you launch an app, they will be able to use it on day one. And these phones have excellent cameras and they can just capture a picture and ask what is the bus number. And this is something that I was very touched with, right? I mean, when I was talking to these children, they said by the time I go to a bus stop and recognize this is the bus number, the bus would already leave. And if we would have provided the smart app to them, they would have just taken a video or clicked a picture and asked a question: what is the bus number? Where does it go? And they would be able to solve that, right? So this is where, like, I think drawing that thin line and having that focus. Yes, I mean, you want to build a smart lens, spectacles, but is that a priority? It's cool, but is that a priority, or is building a smart app a priority? I think that's where, as you rightly mentioned, it's all about understanding the customer pain points, what is the environment they are in. There are so many factors that gets added. That's where it's very subjective to the industry that you're catering to the customers that you're catering to. You need a lot of customer discovery knowledge to be able to segment into this must or nice to have, and what is the impact it is going to have. What is the at what rate you can drive value? Is this quicker or that quicker? And things like that. But yeah, just giving an example.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you so much. I think that example clearly illustrates the point that you made about the must have and nice have. And I think based on this example, maybe, another component of it is also what is easier, faster, more feasible to do that can have direct, immediate impact or benefit to the client, right? In this case, maybe it will take much longer time to build the lens versus, as you said, develop the mobile application. Thank you. Thank you
Absolutely.
so
Thank
much, Chanukya,
you.
for taking the time to be
Yeah.
on the Inside Story podcast. And I think what I take away from today's conversation is impact matters no matter in what field, industry, sector you are. If you pursue impact, I think profits also will follow. And thank you so much for doing great work in terms of democratizing access to AI and making sure AI develops in a way that it meets the societal needs, it does something good, while also kind of follows some moral standards where we don't have to be concerned about our data privacy, security. So thank you so much for also sharing your entrepreneurial journey and all the lessons you've learned so far through your failed as well as successful ventures. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And take care.